We are on page 3. It's Parshat Vayetze. We're going to deal with the first verse in this week's Parsha. So it says like this. Vayetze Yaakov mibe'er Shava, vayelech Harana. And Jacob went out of Be'er Sheva, and he went to Haran. We've done Rashi Sicha many times. Anybody knows what the question is?
Why you have to have both? The going out and the going?
Oh, it's close. Oh, that's also close. So the thing is, we already know, each and every one of us already knows where Yaakov is. That's what we discussed in previous Parsha. We know this is Beersheba. And we don't need to know that he's living Beersheba because we know he is in Beersheba. All it needs to tell us is Vayelech Yaakov Harana, and Yaakov went to Haran. It's redundant to say Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheba. We already know that he's in Beersheba. So we're going to look at Midrash Rabbah, which asks pretty much this question. Midrash Rabbah asks, Vayetze, and he went out. If the Torah will tell us, and he went to Haran, we will understand by ourselves that he went out. The Torah doesn't need to tell us, and he went out. Obviously, if he's going to Haran, he went out of Beersheba. So it says, Vayetze, v'chi lo yatsa misham elahu. And another thing that the Midrash asks, is he the only one to go out? It wasn't just one guy who went out. Who else went out? Very kama chamarim. There were a lot of taxis that carried a lot of produce that he had. They're called chamarim, vechama gamalim, and a lot of trucks that came around. And they also carried his merchandise, his things. Yatzu. Ve'ata omer vayetze Yaakov. So why did he tell us? And only Yaakov left. So Rabbi Azariah b'shem Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon amar. Rabbi Azariah said, Bezman she'at tzadik ba'ir. He gives us a reasoning. You know why it says Vayetze Yaakov? Because like this. At the time that the righteous person is in the city, hu ziva, hu hadara, that person, that tzaddik, he is the splendor of the city. He is the majesty of the city. Yatsa misham, but once he left, what happened to the splendor and majesty? The splendor and majesty also is gone. So it says once he left, the city of Beersheba remained without splendor and without majesty. So that's why it says Vayetze Yaakov, to tell you that the city that used to have splendor and majesty now doesn't have splendor and majesty anymore. Good? Let's continue. Vayetze Yaakov, Gomer, Kotev Rashi, the Rebbe brings Rashi on this verse, and he says, Lo hayat tzarich lichtov ela vayelech Yaakov Harana. Rashi says, our question that we asked in the beginning, it only needed to say, and Yaakov went to Haran. Velama hezkir yetziato. Why did it mention that Yaakov is going out? So he says, Ela Magid, but he tells us, Sheyetziat tzaddik min hamakom osa roshem. It tells us that when a tzaddik leaves the place, the city, it makes an impression. How? Shebezman she'atzadik ba'ir, that at the time when the righteous person is in the city, Hu hoda, hu ziva, hu adara, he is the majesty, he is the glory of the city. Yatsa misham, but once he leaves it, pana hoda, pana ziva, pana adara, no more majesty, no more glamour, no nothing. Vechen, and he gives us, Rashi gives us a similar place. Where do we see the same place? The same thing? It says, Vatetse min hamakom. It says about Ruth, when she left the city to go after Naomi, it also, we already know that Ruth is in the city. So why does it need to tell us that all you need to tell us, she went after Naomi? You don't have to tell her she went out. If she's going after Naomi, we already know that she's going out. So why does she say מן המקום? ותצא מן המקום האמור בנעמי ורות. So why did it say ותצא? Because she was the only righteous person over there. And once Ruth left, how did the city look like without the righteous person? It looks awful. So far so good. And now, like always, the Rebbe makes it complicated. And now the Rebbe brings the question. It's a difficult question. וצריך להבין. He says, we need to understand. This Rashi, the Rebbe says, doesn't make sense at all. Why does the Rashi doesn't make sense? קושייה ששואלים גם כל המפרשים שראיתי. It says, all the commentaries ask the same question over here. And they all get stuck with this Rashi. They don't like Rashi. Why they don't like Rashi? כיצד שייך לומר, the commentaries ask a question, how is it possible to say שעל ידי יציאת יעקב מבאר שבע? You want to tell me that when Yaakov left באר שבע, פנה הודה, פנה זיווה, פנה הדרה? There's no more splendor, there's no more majesty? How can you even say that? בא בשעה שיצחק ורבקה, at the time that who's there? Yitzchak and Rivka. Two righteous people. What are they? They're potatoes? They're chopped liver? They're nothing? How can you even say such a thing? The city doesn't have any more nothing? What's Yitzchak? What's Rivka? הוריו ומחנכיו חולו. If anything, they're greater than him. They're his parents. How can it even say that? These are his teachers. This is his parents, של יעקב. And they are נמצאים בעיר. And they're still in the city. And you want to tell me that the city is nothing like? And the Rebbe explains. He says, I understand in Ruth. When it comes to Ruth, ניחא שם. When it comes to Megillat Ruth, he says, I understand. לא הייתה שם אלא אותה צדקת בלבד. It was only the righteous lady over there. She was the only one. אבל כאן, but over here, when he leaves, he's not leaving the city alone. He's leaving a Rebbe over there. The Rebbe is still in the city. היו יצחק ורבקה, יצחק and Rivka. Yitzchak was the Rebbe of the generation. What do you mean? Everything left. רבי עזריה בשם רבי סימון אומר, and this is an answer that is given in Midrash Rabbah. See if you like it. The Rebbe didn't like it so much. But see if you like it. In Rabbi Azariah Beshem Rabbi Simon Amar, Rabbi Azariah says, in the name of Rabbi Simon, it says, it's still left. The majesty, the splendor is still less. How? Because he explains, לא דומה זכותה של צדיק אחד לזכות של שני צדיקים. It says it's not the same, the merit of one righteous person to the merit of two righteous people. Imagine a city that it has 100 righteous people, right? So you have righteous people. It is known to have many sages. And there's another city that also has sages, might be even greater than this city that has 100 sages, but it only has 2 sages. It doesn't have 100 sages. Just because of the number makes it important. So over here it says it used to have 2 sages. The city used to be an important city with 2 sages, but now the city is only 1 sage. It's less. That's the way Rabbi Azariah explains it. It's a nice explanation, but it's not a strong one. It's not a strong explanation. It's a nice one, but not a strong one. So the Rebbe continues. We're on page 4, the bottom paragraph. ואף שהמפרשים מביאים את התירוץ שבמדרש, you're going to see if you open up the commentaries, that the commentaries do bring this explanation, ניחא דתמן ברות, and they say that we understand in Ruth that when she left it made a big impression because she was only tzedeket. לא הייתה שם אלא אותה צדקת בלבד. אלא הכה, but over here in our case, they have Yitzchak ורבקה, that we have Yitzchak and Rivka that left behind. ומתרץ, and the commentaries we just learned, what do they say? לא דומה זכותו של צדיק אחד לזכותו של שני צדיקים. It's not the same with one righteous person is in the town to two righteous people in town. It says, it's a nice explanation. But if you look at the words of Rashi, that's not what Rashi says. Look at the words of Rashi. What does Rashi says? הרי לשון רש"י, Rashi says, פנה הודה, פנה זיווה, פנה הדרה. It says, its beauty departed, its splendor departed, its majesty departed. It doesn't say lessened. It should say, Rashi, if he agreed with that explanation, it should say lessened. But it doesn't say lessened. What does Rashi says? Departed, gone completely. In other words, it looks like Rashi looks at Yitzchak and Rivka. There's nothing. How can you say that? Yitzchak is the Rebbe of generation. לא רק כמו שכתוב בתחילת פירושו. It's not like it is explained in the beginning of the explanation. שיציאת צדיק מן המקום עושה רושם. In the beginning, maybe you can learn it, because only said Rashi in the beginning that it make an impression. Impression means maybe it lessened the impression. But in the end, when he says, it says departed. There's no more. There's no more impression. There's no more impression? Rivka and Yitzchak are no impression? מכיוון שיצא צדיק אחד, אלא יתרה מזו. Now he increases it. It doesn't say there's no more impression. He says, פנה הודה, it departed completely. פנה זיווה, פנה דרילה, שנסתלק לגמרי. It's not there anymore at all. And that's a difficult thing to understand. And by the way, what we're going to be learning now, is there are many Rebbes, many rabbis throughout the world. But a Rebbe and a rabbi are two different things. And we're going to see what is the definition of a Rebbe. What is a Rebbe? What is a Rebbe and what is a rabbi? So let's start. We're on page 6 at the top. והביאור הוא, and the explanation to this. בהמשך הכתובים, when we're going to continue to read, בעניין זה, in this matter, שהבן 5 ממתין עד לסיום העניין. It says a 5-year-old usually waits until you finish the chapter to ask his questions. You don't let him ask the question as soon as they appear. You say, let's finish the chapter. When you finish the chapter, then you can ask your questions. And we're going to see that if the 5-year-old is going to finish this chapter after Yaakov left, he's not going to have a question anymore. His question is going to be some kind of answered. Let's see how. So it says, when Yaakov left, he says he slept. You remember? He slept in the place. So it says over there, it says, Ne'emar halashon. Over there, we're going to have the Torah telling us, Elokei Yitzchak, the God of Yitzchak, Elokei Avraham, ve'Elokei Yitzchak. And immediately all the commentaries have a cow, have a feet over there. Why are they having a feet? Oh, very good, because he didn't pass away. So what? He's a righteous person. What are you worried about? So what if he didn't pass away? He's still righteous? He says it's true, even though he's still righteous, but you do not say the God of when a person is still alive. The person has a free choice, and he can choose to go against God. And God doesn't take chances. He's not going to take a chance. So you're going to hear the expression, the God of somebody, when? After the person is dead. So all the commentaries go crazy over here. Says, what's going on over here? What does it say? Elokei Yitzchak. Umefaresh Rashi. So Rashi explains. You know why it says Elokei Yitzchak over here? Af al pi says, even though שלא מצינו במקרא, we never found in the Torah, שייחד הקדוש ברוך הוא שמו על הצדיקים, that God attached his name even to righteous people בחייהם, when they're alive, לכתוב אלוקי פלוני, to write the God of this particular person, for the reason that Moshe told us. We don't know what's going to happen. כאן ייחד שמו על יצחק, but over here it says God did say his name on Yitzchak. Why? Listen to the explanation. לפי שכהו עיניו, because Yitzchak was blind, he became blind, וכלוא בבית, and he was imprisoned in his house. Not by people, but by the situation. The situation imprisoned him in his house. והרי הוא, and he's considered to be כמת, like a dead person. ויצר הרע פסק ממנו. Why like a dead person? Because he didn't have any more evil inclination. So because he didn't have any more evil inclination, God wasn't worried that he can go against him. Now, why doesn't a blind person have an evil inclination? Because if you realize that all the evil inclination, all your desires, where do they start? At the eyes. If you didn't, that's right, if you didn't see the neighbor's wife, you don't want her. If you didn't see the neighbor's car, you don't want it. If you didn't see the neighbor's house, you don't have a desire for it. You've never seen it. You don't care. You have no desire for all these things when you're blind. Go ahead.
No, I'm not going to say.
You might have some, I think I know what you want to say, that even a blind person wants comforts and wants things. Yeah, but overall, most of our desires come after we see it. Whether it is seeing it physically or seeing it spiritually. Sometimes seeing it says he wants to be wealthy. Say no child wants to be wealthy. Why doesn't a child want to be wealthy? Because he's interested in lollipops. He might want $1 because the dollar means another lollipop. But he's not looking in health because he doesn't see what wealth is. So the seeing, whether it is seeing, physical seeing, or spiritual seeing, that's what causes the desire. ומכיוון שכן, and since this is so, שוב לא קשה להבין. שוב לא קשה להבן 5. Now it's not so difficult to the 5-year-old to understand. It says, הייתכן שיציאת יעקב מן העיר גרמה שפנה הודה? So now the 5-year-old has an answer. The 5-year-old asks a question, hey, what about Yitzchak? What about Rivka? Now he has an answer. What does it mean? Yitzchak and Rivka are still in the city. So how can you say there's no more splendor, there's no more things? כשנשאר שם יצחק, שהרי לאחרי שיצחק כלוא בבית, because think about it. Who's the guy who's running around city? Who does public relations stuff? It was only Yaakov. Yitzchak now, where is he? He's jailed in the house, page 7. אינו בא במגע עם אנשי העיר. He doesn't come in contact with any of the people in the city. שיוכל להקרין עליהם מאורו וזיבו. It's not like he doesn't have splendor. He doesn't have all the great things that he had in the beginning. He has them. But nobody can experience them anymore. It's just for him. It's just for his wife. It's not for the people of the city anymore. The city doesn't have it. Maybe his house has it, but not the city. וגם לא נתווסף כבוד על ישיבתו בעיר. And also now, it doesn't really matter. People don't even know that he exists. He's jailed in his house. Nobody even knows that he's there. Nobody walks around in the city and says, oh, you know who we have? We have a great tzaddik in the city. So where did you see him last time? Nobody said, yeah, he is a great tzaddik. Well, where is he? He's at home. He's jailed. Nobody sees him. מכיוון שלא רואים אותו להלך בחוצות העיר. Because nobody saw him walking in the city street, in the city square. He's not there anymore. So once Yaakov left, everything left. The city became empty, even though it had a righteous person there, who was Yitzchak. Who had such a righteous person that what? That God even put his name on him. Even such a righteous person. But he's a righteous person to himself. He's not a righteous person to the city, to the community. What about Rivka? Maybe Yaakov wasn't, maybe Yitzchak wasn't around, but Rivka could still run around and do her stuff. So בנוגע לרבקה, when it comes to Rivka, הרי נוסף לכללות העניין, we all know the rule, כל כבודה בת מלך פנימה, all the glory of the daughter of a princess is when she stays humble, when she says she takes it humble, she doesn't show off. In other words, it's not, she's not showing off her glory or her princess ability. So what about this רבקה? היתרה צריכה להימצא במשך כל הזמן במחיצתו של יצחק. Rivka needed to be the entire time helping Yitzchak. He's blind. Somebody need to serve him. מכיוון שקראו עיניו. לא היה יכול להסתדר לבד. He wasn't able to do things on his own. He needed someone to help him. אלא הוא צריך שמישהו יהיה במחיצתו על כל צעד ושעל. וזאת עשתה רבקה. And this is what Rivka did. She was full-time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, serving her husband. כחלק מתפקידה כאישה כשרה. Like the job of a kosher woman. ונמצא שהיחידי מבין שלושת הצדיקים. So now we figured out that the only one that was amongst the 3 tzadikim that were in the city of Be'er Sheva, amongst Itzchak, Rivka, and Yaakov, שהיה מתהלך גם בעיר, that used to go all the way, all around in the city, and give classes and do things. לאחר שקראו עיניו של יצחק, this is after Yitzchak became blind, הוא יעקב, was יעקב. שבלכתו מבית אביו ללמוד תורה בבית מדרשם של שם ועבר, when he left the house of his father to learn Torah in the yeshiva of שם ועבר, וכן מבית המדרש לבית אביו, and he also traveled back from his house to yeshiva and from yeshiva back to his house, הוא צריך לעבור בתוך העיר. He went through the city. ובמילא היה בא במגע עם אנשי העיר. So he used to come in contact with the people of the city. הוא פעל עליהם. And he used to make sure that they're going to improve the ways. עד כדי כך, to what a manner did he make sure that the people behave the right way in that city? שהודה, שהוא הודה, הוא זיווה, הוא הדרה, that he became the splendor of the city, he became the majesty of the city, he, only יעקב בלבד. ולכן כשיצא משם, and therefore when יעקב left, פנה הודה, פנה זיווה, פנה הדרה, all those things, the glamour, the splendor, all the things left with him, שנסתלק לגמרי, and it wasn't just became lessened. It went completely. It disappeared completely. It completely departed. So far, so good? It's going to get even better. Let's go back to Noach. Again, a righteous person. And we're going to try to understand what is going on over here with righteous people that all of a sudden we say, hey, he's righteous, but he's not really righteous. So let's take inside. We've learned this before, but we're just going to mention it over here. It says, we are on page 8. It says, Ele toldot Noach, these are the offspring of Noach. Noach ish tzadik tamim haya bedorotav. These are the offspring of Noach. Noach was a righteous person in his generation. Et האלוקים מתהלך נוח. Noach walked with God. And again, the question is, why does it say?
God. In his generation.
In his generation. It could just say he was righteous. It doesn't have to say in his generation.
Have a lot of competition.
So, over here the Zohar explains, it says, Tamim haya bedorotav. He was righteous in his generation. And what does it mean in his generation? Only in his generation he was righteous. אבל בדורות המאוחרים אינו נחשב לכלום. But in future generation, he wouldn't be anything. He would be nothing. כמו, and the Zohar explains, which generations would be nothing? כמו דורו של אברהם, like the generation of Abraham, דורו של משה, the generation of Moshe, ודורו של דוד, and the generation of King David. And Rashi explains, Rashi says pretty much the same thing. Let's look at Rashi. בדורותיו, לפי דורו היה צדיק, according to his generation he was righteous, ואילו היה בדורו של אברהם, But if he was in the generation of Avraham, lo haya nechshav liklum. He would be considered nothing. Now, Rashi is difficult, not because he says something strange, because of how severely he says it. See, I would have liked Rashi if Rashi says, Ilu haya bedoro shel Avraham, if he was in the generation of Avraham, he wouldn't have been considered a tzaddik. But he doesn't say he wouldn't be considered a tzaddik. What does he say?
He said anything.
He wouldn't be nothing. He says, what do you mean nothing? Nothing? How can you say nothing? Let's explain this just outside and then we're going to read it inside. What's the difference between Noach and between Avraham? So we discussed it in previous classes, and we said that when it comes to Noach, Noach preached to the people. He preached for 120 years. He stayed over there and he preached to the people. He told the people, look guys, I'm building an ark. If you're not going to behave, what's going to happen? You're all going to die. That's what he says. God is going to punish us. Either behave or you're going to die. That's what he preached for 120 years. When the time came and they didn't do tshuva, they didn't repent, and God started bringing the flood, what did Noach do? Nothing. Did he daven for the people? Did he pray, hey God, maybe you can do something, maybe save them, maybe save? Nothing. When it comes to Avraham, what do we see? Even a city as evil as what? And Sodom and Gomorrah, when he heard that God's plan, that God is planning to destroy the place, what did he do?
There might be a few guys that are good.
That's why he started praying for the city. He started praying, he says, God, maybe we can do something about it. Maybe we can save some people. We can see how much better Avraham was than Noach. And then we can go one more step. The step of Moshe Rabbeinu. When it came to the golden calf, and God was about to destroy the Jewish nation, and Moshe heard about it, Moshe was even better than Avraham. Avraham prayed for the city, and once God told him, look, I have no choice, I'm going to destroy them. Avraham said, okay, you have no choice, what can I do? If you have no choice. God came to Moshe, and he told him, I'm going to destroy the Jewish people. I'm going to destroy these evil people. What did Moshe say? Macheni na mesifecha. He said, I want nothing to do with you. If you plan to kill them, put me out of the picture. Put me out of the picture. With King David, we have the similar story. I don't remember exactly the details, but if you remember the countings, we're not supposed to count Jews. And King David told his general to count the Jews, and there was a plague, and it was much worse than COVID. People were dying left and right, and pretty much King David told God, he says, take me instead of them. That's how King David ended it. Yeah, but we can see that it went the level of the tzaddik, so an improvement in each and every generation, all the way from Noach to Avraham. Our question is going to be here, Rashi doesn't make sense. And we see soon why. We are in page 8, so 7. וקצת צריך עיון. We need to pay attention. To which aspect? מה שנקטו אלמלא היה בדורו של אברהם. It says, if he wasn't in generation of Avraham, if Noach wasn't in generation of Avraham, הרי באמת היה בדורו. It says, what do you mean if he wasn't in generation of Avraham? Noach was in the generation of Avraham. Noach lived before the flood, and as we remember, those people who were born before the flood lived for many years. So even though Avraham is 10 generations after Noach, Noach is still alive at the time of Avraham. By the way, it's an interesting fact. You're going to remember now for the rest of your life this fact. שנוח מת, when did Noach die? בשנת נוח לחיי אברהם. In the 58th year of the life of Avraham. And 58 in Gematria, 50 is Nun, and Chet is 8. Spell out the word Noach. So Noach passed away 58 years into Abraham's life. It's a nice way to remember this. So we need to understand, what do you mean? By the way, anybody has an answer for that? Go ahead.
Well, I don't think that Noah's getting credit for the fact that he had to have tremendous strength to be righteous amongst all of that sin.
And Avraham? Abraham's father was an idol worshipper.
That's true too.
I say Noach, before the flood, was righteous in his generation. As soon as the flood came to the stop, he went to the wrong thing. He grew the grapevine, he got drunk. It's like there was a mess after that. He was no longer.
You're saying after the flood he was no longer righteous.
No longer as righteous.
No longer as righteous. Okay. We're going to see. But even if you're going to say he was as righteous, we're going to see the difference. We're on page 9. We're going to explain it according to the simple explanation. So, it's true that when Avraham was 58 years old, Noach was in his generation. But you know who wasn't in that generation? Avraham. Avraham didn't exist yet. Now, what do I mean that Avraham did? I'm not just talking about the Avraham that happened when he was 99 years old. When did God reveal himself to Avraham? When did he give him a mission? When did he make him a different person? In which Parsha? In Parshat Lech Lecha. And how old was Avraham then? 75 years old, as we're going to learn. Vayehi 75 שנה בצאתו מחרן. He was 75 years old when he left Haran. That's by Avraham. Yeah? So even though Noach was in the generation of Avraham, that's not the Avraham we're talking about. We're talking a different Avraham. And Avraham is going to live later on. So until now, Noach and Avraham are the same. But after Avraham becomes Avraham, after God comes... By the way, this is another difference between Noach and Avraham, just to answer your question. The reason why Noach was righteous, you know why? Until the end? Because God came to him and talked to him. Imagine God coming to you every day and talking to you. And when you mess up, he's coming in. Oh, come on, Jeff. We had a discussion yesterday. How can you do this today? God didn't talk to Avraham until the age of 75. And he was still more righteous than Noach. Big difference. He seeked God by himself. Yeah, but over here we're going to go another direction. So, בתחילת פרשת לך לך, in the beginning of Parshat Lech Lecha, Rashi explains, Lech Lecha, God tells Avraham, go for yourself, להנאתך ולטובתך, to your own good, to your own enjoyment. ושם, over there in the land of Israel, אעשך לגוי גדול, over there I'm going to make you into a great nation. And he continues, וכאן אי אתה זוכה לבנים. And over here you're not going to merit sons. And then he tells him one more thing. ועוד, another things, שהודיע טבעך בעולם. I'm going to show your true nature. The nature that you don't even know you have, I'm going to bring into this world. And that was, by this time already, Noach doesn't exist. Noach died away. Noach passed away when Avraham was 58. This is happening when Avraham is 75. That's the first time Avraham and God met. ועל פי זה מובן, and according to this it's understood, שלפני שהיה להודיע טבעך בעולם, that before God wanted to show Avram's nature in this world, העולם לא ידע מהגדלות של אברהם. The world didn't know that Avraham was great. In other words, when Avraham was 58 years old, and you ask, who's the righteous? Everybody pointed to whom? Melchizedek, or even more than Melchizedek, or Noach. Yeah, people say, this guy. Everybody, all the righteous people, he's the father of all the righteous people. This is the guy. This is the main guy. Until that time, Noach was the top of the pyramid. When did Noach, but once Avraham got to that God says, I'm going to make your nature known in this world, that's it. All those tzaddikim of the previous generation became not even comparable to Avraham. העולם לא ידע מהגדלות של אברהם. At that time, God, before the age of 75, nobody knew from the greatness of Avraham. ובאותו זמן, at that time, ידעו שהאיש צדיק תמים הוא נוח. the top of the pyramid in righteousness was Noach. ובמילא, אי אפשר לומר שבאותו מעמד ומצב, we cannot say that at that time, לפי שטבעו של אברהם, לפני שטבעו של אברהם נודע בעולם, before the nature of Abraham was revealed in this world, נוח לא היה נחשב לכלום. At that time, you couldn't say Noach was nothing. Yeah? Noach was something. Not Noach was something. Noach was everything. Until when? Until Abraham became 75. רק לאחר שהיה הלהודיע טבעך בעולם, only after the age of 75, כשהתפרסם בעולם הגדולה של אברהם, when everybody understood the greatness of Abraham, אז אפשר לומר שלגבי הדרגה של אברהם, then you can say that compared to Abraham, now you can say Noach was nothing. Because we're talking about a completely different level. Until now we were talking about righteousness amongst whom? Amongst human beings. From Abraham we're talking about righteousness amongst Jews. And a righteousness amongst Jews is completely different level. The expectations are completely different. God expects from a Jew more than he expects from a Gentile. I wish, I wish all the Jews in the world will be righteous Gentiles. That's a very high level. We're not even there. But that doesn't mean that God wants you to be there. God wants you to be even higher than that. Like it says, we're supposed to be lights to the nation, lights unto the nations. וכיוון, we're in the bottom paragraph on page 9, וכיוון שלהודיע טבעך בעולם, and since that this God placing the nature of Abraham in this world, קרה רק שהתרחש, לך לך מארצך וממולדתך, only happened when Abraham became 75 years old, כמו שכתוב, לקצוויתן ואברהם בן 5 שנים ו70 שנה בצאתו מחרן, and Abraham was 75 years old when he left חרן, מובן מה שרש"י אומר, now we understand what Rashi says, שאילו היה בדורו של אברהם, if he was in the generation of Abraham, because he was never in the generation of the Abraham we're talking about. לא היה נחשב לכלום, he wouldn't be considered anything, because he was, Noach, you might say, was a perfect Gentile, but he wasn't a perfect Jew. He wasn't even a good Jew, never mind a perfect Jew. When it comes to a Gentile, he was perfect. When you compare him to the behavior that God expects from a Jew, he was not. כי הלהודיע טבעך בעולם, because to put the nature of God, of Abraham in this world, היו כמה וכמה שנים לאחר מיתת נוח, were many years after the death of נוח. כיוון שאברהם היה בן 58 במות נוח, since we already established that Abraham was 58 years at the time of Noach's death, והלהודיע טבעך בעולם היה כשהוא היה בן 75 שנים, and that happened when Abraham was 75. ובפרט על פי המבואר בחסידות, especially according to what we explain in חסידות on many occasions, בכמה מקומות, שעבודת אברהם, well, by the way, we can see a proof of that. You know where we can see a proof of how Abraham, all his life before he was 75 years old, were not really anything? Because there are no fruits from all his work. There's zero fruits. What do I mean? When Abraham left Haran, Abraham converted hundreds of thousands of people. Hundreds of thousands.
There's all the souls that he made.
That's right. Hundreds of thousands. But it was before he became a Jew, a fully fledged Jew. And all these souls, hundreds of thousands of Jews, people who became monotheistic, believed in one God. They all believed in one God during Abraham's time. What happened to them after Abraham died, to all these people? They all went back to idol worship. All of them. Each and every one of them went back to idol worship. The only one that didn't was Yitzchak. The whole hundreds of thousands of people who he had influence. As long as he was there, they did the right thing. Once he was gone, they left. שעבודת אברהם בהיותו בחרן ואת הנפש שזכרו, all those people that he converted, those hundreds of thousands, לא היה לה קיום והמשך. It never had any lasting effect. ועיקר עבודת אברהם, העבודה שהיה לה קיום והמשך, and the main work of Avraham, the work that had continuation, היא העבודה שהוא עשה לאחר מה שנהיה בן 75 שנה. Was the work that he did after he became 75 years old. שמזה מובן, from here we understand, that only then started the generation of Avraham. Generation of Avraham started when Avraham was 75. ועל פי זה מובן, מה שכתוב בזוהר, now we're going to understand what it says in the זוהר, שאילו נוח היה בדור של אברהם, that if Noach was in a generation of Avraham, it meant in a generation when Avraham was 75 years old. כשהוא היה בן 75 שנה, הוא היה נחשב, there he would be considered to be nothing. Because Avraham was the first Jew, and Noach was a perfect Gentile. That's why he was considered nothing compared to Avraham. God expects out of a Jew much more than he expects out of a Gentile. That's why we have all these commandments to do that the Gentiles don't. One more thing, again to give us a deeper explanation of what a Rebbe is or what a Rebbe is. So we see the progressions. Amar Chizkiah. This is on page 11. And Chizkiah said, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Mishum Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yirmiyah said in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Ben Yochai, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, יכול אני לפתור את כל העולם כולו מן הדין. I can, let me read it in the English, I can absolve the entire world from judgment for sins. You probably heard this comment somewhere else in another religion. Correct? By the way, even that they stole from us, as you can see that. Even that comment is stolen from us. Yeah. This is a comment from Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Yeah? Even that comment they stole from us. But that comment needs to be explained. We make fun of that comment. Right? What do you mean? I can sin and you go take care of my sin? How's that even possible? So let's try to get an understanding of what the job of a leader is. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai amar v'gila. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai revealed, יכולה אני לפתור את כל העולם כולו מן הדין, I am able to absolve the entire world from judgment. והנה, and the Rebbe says, באם הציבור נשאר בקלקולו חס ושלום, it says, I don't understand. What do you mean? You want us to continue to sin, and he's going to absolve us from judgment? That's what it means? It says it doesn't make sense. Well, we're going to continue to sin, rob, kill, do whatever we want, and he's going to absolve us of judgment? That doesn't make sense at all. That's against Judaism completely. In Judaism, you're supposed to fix your own mistakes. Nobody else is supposed to fix it for you. ונשאר בקלקולו חס ושלום, the entire world is going to be rotten, God forbid. לאחר שרבי שמעון פוטר אותו מן הדין, רבי שמעון בר יוחאי לא עשה להם טובה בכך. He says, and I don't understand, what do you think? רבי שמעון בר יוחאי does them a favor? There's no favor. They're still spoiled. The neshama is still blemished. Until they fix it, until the neshama gets fixed, that's it. It cannot, and by the way, somebody else cannot absolve your sin. The one who messes it up is the one who fixes it. Yeah? This is why we have the red heifer. We did the golden calf. Yeah? The golden calf, it says, Tavo ima v'techaper al bita. Will come the mother, the symbolism of the mother, the red heifer. Since we brought death into this world by us sinning in the golden calf, we could have lived forever then. But when we sinned, death was reintroduced into this world. Now we have to take the red heifer and use it to purify ourselves from the death we brought into this world. Again, we need to do the purification. It cannot come from the outside. So Admor HaZaken מבאר בתניא, the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, וכפי שגם כתוב בספרי מוסר, and there's many Musar book that also explain it, שמכיוון שהעונש הוא על פי תורת חסד, it says, the way we look at punishment and the way Christianity looks at punishment are completely different. Punishment by Judaism is kindness. All punishment by Judaism is kindness. There's no punishment which is not kind. You are not allowed to punish a child unless you're being kind to him. That's what it says. You're not allowed to be angry when you punish a child. Because anger, so it says, why punish him? Because the punishment is only for the good of the child. Then you're allowed to punish. That's why in Judaism, there is no such thing as jail. Because jail does not do anything for the person doesn't change his mind. Sitting 10 years in jail, what happened? He just learned how to be a better criminal. Yeah? It says, make sure that he repays. He messed up something, make sure that he repays, whichever way. That's an appropriate punishment. But he says, the Alter Rebbe says, that the punishment is kindness. מובן מאליו שעל ידי העונש מרוויחים הרבה יותר. It says, now we understand that the punishment is something good. We shouldn't run away from punishment. We should embrace it. It fixes up. Hell, by us, is a good place. It's not an evil place. We need Gehenna. We need hell. What is it there? It there to fix our neshama. That's what it's there for. אדמו"ר הזקר באיגרת הקודש ממשיל את המושג של עונש. So the Alter Rebbe explains it like this. He says, לבן מלך, it says there's a prince שהתלכלך, that ran around outside and became dirty. He played around in the horse's doo-doo, you know? והמלך רוצה לשטוף אותו, and the king wants to hug his son. But he's not going to hug him when he's full of doo-doo. רוצה לשטוף אותו ולנקות אותו, he wants to clean him. Why? כדי שהוא יוכל לחזור ולהיות יחד עם המלך, because the impurity of the doo-doo is not befitting to become in front of the king's palace. So the child needs to be clean out of all the doo-doo that he brought onto himself. So what does he do? בשביל לנקות את הלכלוך, in order, we are on the last page, page 12, in order to clean the dirtiness, so it says, לעתים מספיק מים קרים, sometimes you can just use a little bit of water, and it can be cold water. Yeah? Which means the punishment doesn't have to be much. A little bit of cold water, the kid doesn't like it, to get cold water poured on him, but that's what cleans him, so he needs it. But sometimes the dirtiness is deep inside, and you need to use what? Hot water. לעתים מים חמים, sometimes you need hot water. ולפעמים צריכה שטיפה במים יותר חמים, and sometimes you even need boiling water in order to get all the dirtiness out. שבאותו רגע זה נראה כמו עונש. At that time it looks like a punishment. But it's not a punishment. It's a way to purify the soul so he can come back into the palace of the king. אך מובן בפשטות שהשכר שמגיע לידי זה, but the reward that comes through this, הוא נעלה הרבה יותר, it is much higher. שהנסיך יכול לחזור להיות עם המלך באופן טוב וקדוש. Now the prince can go back to the king and be with purity with him. נשאלת השאלה, so here comes the question. Rabbi Shimon knew this. So what is Rabbi Shimon saying? מכיוון שרבי שמעון בר יוחאי אומר שהוא יכול למנוע את העונש, since Rabbi Shimon בר יוחאי says that he can prevent the punishment, אז בעצם הוא גם מונע גם את מה שברכים על העונש. He is also going to prevent us what? Going back to the king. We cannot go back to the king with the blemishes in our soul. It doesn't, the reason why we spend 11 months in Gehenom is why? Is so that the soul can be purified and go back to God. And that's the only way to purify it. So what is Rabbi Shimon did? You're not giving us the punishment? That's a punishment, not giving us the punishment. Now we can go back to God. So what are you doing? הניקיון של הלכלוך. This is the washing of our dirtiness. והאפשרות של איחוד עם הקדוש ברוך הוא. Now we can go back to become united with God. Because of his big favor to us. How does that make sense? ובאם כן, במה מתבטאת הטובה שעושה רבי שמעון? So he says, so how did Rabbi Shimon help? Where is the help of Rabbi Shimon? And the Rebbe explains, והביאור הוא, בשעה שרבי שמעון בר יוחאי אומר שהוא יכול לפעול דבר גדול, לפתור את העולם מידת הדין, at the time that Rabbi Shimon says that he can prevent us from this punishment, this is what he's saying. מובן שהניקיון שנפעל לידת הדין, obviously, that the purity that's going to be brought down into this world, into us, through the punishment, יפעל בצורה אחרת. He's able to do it, he's able to purify us in another manner. What's the other manner that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai can purify us? He says, I found another way to purify you. How? What is it? B'zrat Adin, that was before him. What's the other one?
Study the Zohar.
Oh, study Kabbalah. That's why it was revealed at his time. This is what Rabbi Shimon says. Just by the way, it's not like Rabbi Shimon says, a person who studies Zohar, who puts really his life in it, the reason why he will not need Gehenom is not because he will not need it because he sinned, because he is not going to sin. It says by studying the Zohar, by studying Kabbalah, by studying all the things, I'm going to be preventing you from sin. This is what he's saying. Not I'm going to take it away and I'm going to make some trick. The trick is you're not even going to come to it. That's the trick. שהניקיון שנפעל יפעל בצורה אחרת, it will come through a different manner. שלא על ידי עונש, it will not come through עונש, through punishment. It will be, you can either work hard in Gehenom, or you can work hard learning Torah. So the work hard learning Torah is the same working hard. ולא על ידי ייסורים, but it will not come through the punishment of Gehenom. Like כפי שאומרים לתפילה בכל יום, like we say in davening every day, אלא באופן שרבי שמעון בר יוחאי עושה את זה. This is in a manner that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai will do it. How will he do it? By giving us a new Torah to learn, so that we'll be able to do the Yisurim through the learning of this Torah. רבי שמעון בר יוחאי פתח את מעיינות תהום רבה. He opened up the well springs. והארובות השמיים נפתחו, and it says, the well springs and the heavens opened up, עד שרזי תורה נשפכו כמו גשם, until the secrets of the Torah poured down onto the earth, שנשפך מהשמיים מעיינות תהום, וזה פעל גם לתינוקות מהרחוב שגם הם ילמדו. And this caused at his time that even students, even children, learned Kabbalah. ועל ידי הזכות שלו, by his merit, by התורה שלו, his Torah, ההנהגה שלו, the way he acted, וההשפעה שלו, the way he affected even generations like us, הוא בדרך ממילא משנה את ההנהגה של הציבור מכאן ולהבא. That by the way we're going to change our behavior to such a manner that we're not even going to come to sin, and that's why we will not need to go to Gehenna. And if you combine all those 3 chapters that we just learned today, we see all what the Rebbe is. First of all, a Rebbe is not someone who's righteous in his own house. That's not, by the way, this is not just a Rebbe, any religious person.
Else.
That's right.
Even king.
Any religious person. Any religious person, you cannot call yourself a religious person if you don't take care, if you don't go out to the community. If you don't have an effect over the community, you sit down and learning Torah all day long, that's not called a religious person. That's the first thing. And second of all, you cannot just tell yourself, I'm going to be a nice man, I'm going to be a nice boy, I'm going to be a nice person.
That's a Noah.
That's a Noach. God says, no, that's not enough. You cannot just be a nice man. You cannot just not cheat, not kill, not do all the commandments in 10 commandments, do all the laws that make sense. It's not enough. I expect out of you more. I expect out of you Avraham. I expect you out of you. And then there's a third section. It says the religious person, you cannot just sit back down and says, I am religious. I do all the commandments and I do everything. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai came and says, no, even that you need more, and it's for your own good. It says, if you put yourself in my learning of the Torah, in learning Chassidus, in learning Kabbalah, you won't even need the Gehenna. You won't even need to go there. Not because I'm taking it away. I am taking it away. Because the more you learn, the more you experience down here, the less you're going to sin in order to get up there. So those are the 3 stages of what we learned from this week's Parsha.
I believe it. I believe you. I believe what it says. But I don't see how. A little bit of exposure I had to Kabbalah, and a little bit of exposure I had to Hasidus, and a little bit of exposure to Tanya. It's like I learned a lot, but I can still sin.
Oh, you're very good. So there's 2 major things. You learn psychology. So you can probably, there's two major ways to prevent you from going into the wrong way. One is concentrate of not doing the wrong thing. All the time, concentrate. The problem is that once you're concentrated on not doing the bad things, what are you involved with all the time? What are you thinking about all the time? Bad thing. There's another thing. Don't worry about the bad things at all. You know what concentrate on? Concentrate on elevating yourself. When you concentrate on elevating yourself, Kabbalah, Hasidus, a person elevates himself, automatically you will not want to do the bad things. You're not even working, you're never working on not doing it. It will come on its own. You say to yourself, me, it just doesn't belong. You know, you hold yourself into such a level that those things that you needed to battle yesterday, you're saying, those are stupidities. I'm not interested in them anymore. You probably saw yourself in life when you grew up, you reached that. Those are the two major ways. So this is what Rabbi, and if you did, and like you like the Rebbe says many times, it says Kabbalah and Hasidus is like vodka. It says, what does it mean? It's like vodka. So there was one time a Hasid that came to the Rebbe and he says, I'm learning Kabbalah, I'm learning Hasidus, I've been learning Hasidus for 20 years, and it has no effect on me. I'm still as much as a sinner as I was 20 years ago. So the Rebbe tells him, it's because you didn't learn enough. But it says, I did. I learn all the time. So the Rebbe says, you know what it's like? It's like a person who's drank 5 cups of vodka, and he says, it didn't affect me. He says, it cannot be that it didn't affect you. Take a little bit more, you'll see that it affected you. That's the idea behind it. So it's true. You've learned and you've seen, but you didn't see. It has an effect. Sometimes you need to take that little bit more, and then you'll notice.
So, question in the lesson, when you said, when he left Haran, the Chumash says, with all the souls that they made, and that's those people, and it said, then we know that none of them hung around. How do we know? Is there Agada in the Gemara? Is it a Midrash?
How do we know they're not hanging around?
Yeah.
Because the world was full of idol worship when Itzchak was there. There was no more...
We know the entire world was it? Maybe there was a guy over there who says, I used to learn with Avraham.
Maybe him, but his kid didn't. I'm not sure how many years it lasted, but it didn't last for 3 generations. By the time Yaakov was around, that's it. He was the only one.
Okay, just asking, how do we know?
Because we know that everybody was idol worshipping there. Even Ishmael, even Esav, that was the problem. There was nobody to hang around with. That's why, if you remember, otherwise you could go to these places and hang around with this.
What about Yaakov went to the yeshiva of Shem and Ever?
Shem and Ever, well, yeah.
But not their children necessarily.
Nothing was left. Nothing was left. From all the Jewish nation, we only have the 12 tribes, the kids of Yaakov. Everything until Yaakov, nothing left. All the branches, Ishmael and Esav, all those branches, and Avraham had, after that, 10 more kids. You remember after he took Machlabek, he took Hagarbek, he had 10 kids, nothing. By the way, this is the fight of Avraham and Sarah. Avraham, Hashem told him, Av Hamon Goim, you're going to be the father of many nations. And Sarah only had 1 kid. That was the whole fight. And she was telling him, Avraham, you're no more Avraham. You're not the father of many nations. You're only the father of him. And he says, no, but God told him, I'm the father of many nations. And that was the fight between Avraham and Sarah throughout the thing.
Okay. I love this and I enjoyed it. It's great stuff and we learned a lot. But it's just funny that the very opening, why do we have to say Vayetze, say Vayetze, right? So I would say, so that we don't have the confusion that we had when Avram came to mourn for Sarah. And they say, what do you mean he came? He came from where?
Yeah, but over there it's Satum. It's not revealed where he's coming from. You can learn it many ways. Over here it doesn't. We know that he's in Beersheba. And from the verses before that, we know that that's his location.
We know that Yaakov
is in Beersheba.
Yeah, we know it.
It's clear in the verses.
I'm going to go look.
Yeah.
Because Because in Avraham it's not clear.
Yeah, in Avraham it wasn't clear, but over here it is clear, so we don't need it.